Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The gunfire came so fast it sounded like the desert itself was screaming. Commander Ryland Voss dropped behind a broken ridge, sand blasting into his eyes as bullets chewed through the stones above his head. Around him, his SEAL team, tough men who'd survived jungles, oceans, and nightmares, were pinned to the earth like helpless targets. And the worst part? They had walked right into it. An ambush built with precision. A trap designed to kill them all. Voss could taste blood in his mouth. Dust clung to his eyelashes. His left ear rang from an explosion that had missed him by inches. He glanced at his team, 6 men spread thin across the canyon floor, each trapped behind useless cover while militants circled them from the cliffs. 50 enemies. Maybe more. His men were breathing hard. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else whispered a goodbye. This was where SEALs were supposed to die. Voss tried to rise just enough to fire back, but a bullet smashed into the rock near his cheek. Chips of stone cut into his face. He didn't flinch. "Stay low," he barked, though he knew it didn't matter. They were running out of time. The canyon was shaped like a bowl, soundless death would roll down to them from above. And their extraction bird was still miles away. They'd never make it out. Not like this. Petty Officer Bram Keller crawled beside him, his arm bleeding heavily. "Sir," he gasped, "they're flanking left. We're done." "No," Voss said, but the word felt weak even in his own mouth. A rocket whooshed from somewhere on the cliff. It hit the far wall and shook the whole canyon, kicking sand into the air like a storm. The men coughed, choking on dust. Through the haze, Voss saw 2 militants sprinting higher up, preparing another shot. He shut his eyes for half a second. "This is my fault. I led them here. I misread the intel. I failed them." One sharp, clean shot echoed from the ridge above them. Everyone froze. The 2 militants on the cliff jerked backward, both falling like dropped puppets. Keller blinked. "Sir, that wasn't us." Another militant fell. The shots were too precise. Too fast. Too cold. A sniper. But not one of theirs. Voss forced himself to look toward the jagged rocks to the west, where a thin line of heat shimmer blurred the world. Shadows moved between stones, steady, controlled, almost invisible. Someone was up there. Someone who had been watching. Someone who waited until the SEALs were seconds from death, and then decided to intervene. Keller whispered, "Commander, who the hell is that?" Voss didn't breathe. Because deep down he already knew one name he never expected to hear again. A name he had buried. A name he had failed. And if it really was her, then the battlefield was about to change. The gunfire slowed, but it didn't stop. The militants were confused, scrambling across the cliffside, unsure where the invisible shooter hid. Dust clouds lifted as bodies dropped. But Commander Ryland Voss wasn't looking at the enemies anymore. He was staring at the rocks above, his heartbeat hammering like something inside him wanted to escape. Bram Keller winced as he tightened a torn sleeve around his bleeding arm. "Sir, you look like you've seen a ghost." Voss didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The name buzzing in his skull felt dangerous, like saying it out loud might shatter something inside him. He swallowed hard, forcing words into shape. "Move to the western ridge. Crawl low. The sniper's clearing us a path." "Sniper?" Keller hissed. "We don't have one." "I know." That was the problem. They crawled fast and silent, using the chaos above as cover. Rifle cracks echoed in measured beats, calm, steady, almost familiar. Every shot rewired Voss's memory, dragging him backward through years he'd tried to forget. Back to the woman whose trigger discipline was legendary. Back to the soldier who could kill a moving target from a mile away. Back to the one who saved him once and vanished forever. Her name wasn't spoken in the teams anymore. Not after what happened. Not after the betrayal accusations. They called her a traitor. He never believed it. But he never defended her strongly enough either. Keller nudged him. "Sir, I'm serious. Who's up there?" Voss didn't get the chance to answer. A shadow flickered across the upper ridge. A faint silhouette crouched behind a jagged formation, the long outline of a suppressed rifle blending with stone. The figure moved like wind-made flesh. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Voss felt his breath catch. His throat went dry. "It can't be," he whispered. The figure fired again, crack, and a militant dropped instantly, arms flying wide. Then the silhouette slid behind another rock, disappearing like smoke. They reached a narrow dip in the canyon, finally some real cover. The rest of the team crawled in behind them, eyes wide, breaths heavy. Chief Ortega spat dust. "Sir, someone's taking out enemies like they're playing a video game." "Who is it?" Voss's jaw tightened. He wanted to say it. He wanted to admit who he believed was saving them. But the truth felt like a punch waiting to land. He wasn't ready to face it. "Not yet." "Eyes up," he ordered. "We move when the sniper stops firing. They're punching us an exit route." The team exchanged glances, confusion, fear, maybe even hope. Then a sudden silence fell over the canyon. Too sudden. No wind. No sand movement. No shots. Just a quiet that felt heavy. Watching. Chief Ortega shifted. "Why'd they stop?" "We still have hostiles." Voss listened. Heard nothing. Felt everything. Because the sniper didn't stop randomly. They stopped because they were waiting. For him. A faint voice drifted from the rocks above, low, clear, female. "Rylan, move your men. Now." Keller's eyes widened. "Sir, did she just?" Voss didn't answer, because he knew that voice. He'd memorized it once. And hearing it again felt like a wound reopening. The voice drifted down the canyon walls like a memory he'd spent years trying to bury, sharp, steady, unmistakably hers. Commander Rylan Voss froze. His men didn't breathe. Even the dust in the air seemed to stop mid-float. Keller whispered, "Sir, who is that woman?" But Rylan didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat felt locked shut. Because the last time he heard that voice, it had been through radio static on a mission that went catastrophically wrong. A mission that ended with accusations, betrayal claims, and her court-martial. A mission where he, her commanding officer, failed to speak up for her when she needed him most. She disappeared afterward. Off the grid. Vanished like she never existed. And now she was aiming a sniper rifle at the enemies trying to kill him. Ortega whispered urgently, "Commander, orders?" Rylan snapped back into the present like he'd been slapped. "We move on my signal. Stay low. Follow the path she cleared." "That she cleared?" Keller blinked. "So you do know her?" "Move," Rylan said, ending the conversation. The team crawled along the thin path toward the base of the ridge. Above them, the mysterious sniper fired again, precise, disciplined shots that never missed. Every bullet seemed to land exactly where Rylan's team needed it to. Every shot felt like she was shielding them with her own hands. But why? Why return now? Why save the man who failed her? Why risk revealing herself after years in hiding? They reached the far rocks, where thick granite walls formed a tight passageway. Rylan signaled the team to hold. He scanned the cliffs. Shadows shifted above. A sliver of movement. Then silence. Keller exhaled shakily. "Sir, whoever she is, she just saved all of us." Ortega nodded. "We owe her our lives. I say we bring her in." Rylan clenched his jaw. Bring her in? If they tried, she'd vanish again. She could disappear like smoke. She'd always been that way. A ghost with a heartbeat. He looked up. "She's coming down." "How do you know?" Keller asked. "Because she wants me to follow." The men exchanged a look, confusion mixed with suspicion. A small stone suddenly rolled down the ridge, landing near their boots. Attached to it was a thin strip of torn fabric with a single word written in dust. Ortega's eyes shot wide. Sir? That's kinda creepy." Rylan didn't wait for debate. "Let's go. Single file. Weapons up." They moved quickly through the passageway, hearts hammering. The path twisted sharply, revealing a narrow slope leading up the ridge. Fresh footprints marked the sand, light, careful, familiar. Rylan's stomach tightened. They reached a small plateau. And there she stood. Her silhouette carved out by the sun. Sniper rifle slung across her back. Hair tied into a rough braid. Same stillness. Same lethal calm. Her eyes locked onto Rylan's. Not warm. Not angry. Just unreadable. Keller whispered, "Sir, who is she?" Rylan swallowed slowly. "Her name," he said, voice low and heavy, "is Lyra Dane. The ex-SEAL sniper who vanished. The woman he failed. And the only one who could save them now." Lyra Dane didn't smile. Didn't blink. Didn't move anything except the faint rise and fall of her chest as the wind brushed sand across the plateau. Her sniper rifle rested against her back like a silent threat. Rylan felt every emotion he'd locked away over the years boiling at once. Relief, guilt, anger, and something softer he didn't dare name. Keller whispered, "Sir. She looks like she could drop all of us before we touch our triggers." "She could," Rylan said quietly. Lyra's eyes flicked over the team, calculating, fast, cold. Then she spoke. You're all compromised. A second wave is coming in less than 10 minutes. If you stay in this canyon, you'll die. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. She wasn't here to catch up. She wasn't here to forgive anything. She was here because something bigger forced her hand. Ortega stepped forward. You saved our lives. We're grateful. But how do you know all this? Lyra's gaze locked onto him, sharp as a blade. Because I've been tracking the militia for 7 days. And because they want one of you alive. She paused. Specifically you, Commander Voss. The air froze. Ryland's chest tightened. Me? Why? You know why. The accusation hit like a punch. Keller and Ortega exchanged confused looks, but Ryland didn't take his eyes off Lyra. He knew what she was referring to. The mission 5 years ago. The one that went wrong. The one that destroyed her career and shredded the trust between them. Keller finally asked, Commander, what's she talking about? Ryland didn't answer. Lyra did. They think he still has the coordinates, she said. The ones from the Black Spire operation. Ortega's eyes widened. That operation was classified, buried. You two were the only survivors. Lyra's expression didn't change. Exactly. Silence wrapped around them like a noose. Ryland felt heat crawling up his neck. We need to move. Now. But Lyra stepped in front of him, not aggressive but firm. You lied to the Navy about what happened that night, she said loud enough for the team to hear. And you let them tear my career apart to protect yourself. Keller's head snapped around. Sir? Is that true? Ryland's chest squeezed. The truth was more complicated than one sentence. But this wasn't the place. Not with bullets still echoing in the canyon behind them. Lyra continued, voice cutting like steel dragging across stone. The militia thinks you still have the drive with the Spire coordinates. They want it. They'll hunt you until they get it. Ortega frowned. But why help us then? Why not let the commander face it? Lyra turned away, scanning the horizon. Because if he dies, they'll tear apart every SEAL base until they find what they're looking for. And innocent people will pay for his silence. Her words stung more than gunfire. Ryland stepped closer. Lyra, I didn't want any of this. She didn't look at him. You wanted a clean record, she said. And I paid for it. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of her accusation pressed down on the entire plateau. Then Lyra slung her rifle forward and pointed up the ridge. Argue later, she said. They're coming. And if you want your team to live, follow me. Without waiting for a response, she started moving. Ryland hesitated only a second before following. He had no choice. Lyra Dane was their only chance. They climbed fast, boots scraping against stone as Lyra led them through a narrow cut in the ridge that none of the SEALs had noticed before. The wind howled through the rocks, carrying the smell of dust and metal. Ryland couldn't stop watching Lyra's silhouette as she moved ahead, silent, controlled, untouchable. She hadn't looked at him again since dropping the truth like a grenade in front of his men. Keller panted behind him. Sir. She's acting like she knows every exit in this desert. She does, Ryland muttered. Because she had always been like that, seeing things others couldn't, reading terrain like it whispered to her. That's why she had been the best sniper the team's ever had. That's why her fall hit him hardest. Halfway up the slope, Ortega whispered, Commander, be straight with us. Did you really leave her hanging back then? Ryland didn't answer at first. He didn't have a clean explanation. No version of the truth made him look good. I didn't speak soon enough, he finally said. And when I tried, it was too late. Keller stared at him, disappointed. Sir, she was one of us. I know, Ryland said softly. I know. Ahead, Lyra paused at a ridge overlook. She raised a closed fist, halt signal. The team dropped instantly, scanning the valley below. Dust trails streaked the horizon. Trucks, 8 of them, racing toward the canyon where the SEALs had nearly died. Keller swallowed. That's a lot of enemies. That's the second wave, Lyra said, eyes locked through her scope. They're grid-searching everything. And they're armed for capture, not kill. Ryland's stomach twisted. They want me alive. They want the drive, she corrected. You're just the container. The team shifted uncomfortably. Lyra lowered her rifle slightly and looked at Ryland for the first time since the confrontation. Her eyes weren't angry, they were tired. Deeply tired. I didn't come back because I forgave you. I came because your death will start a war the country isn't ready for. Ryland felt the weight of her words settle in his chest like lead. Lyra, the drive was destroyed. Years ago. Her jaw tightened. Prove it. Ryland held her stare. I can't. It burned in the crash. You saw it. I saw fire, she said. Not the drive. Her doubt cut deep. But she wasn't wrong. Ortega frowned. But why help us then? Why not let the commander face it? Lyra turned away, scanning the horizon. Because if he dies, they'll tear apart every SEAL base until they find what they're looking for. And innocent people will pay for his silence. Her words stung more than gunfire. Rylan stepped closer. Lyra, I didn't want any of this. She didn't look at him. You wanted a clean record, she said. And I paid for it. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of her accusation pressed down on the entire plateau. Then Lyra slung her rifle forward and pointed up the ridge. Argue later, she said. They're coming. And if you want your team to live, follow me. Without waiting for a response, she started moving. Rylan hesitated only a second before following. He had no choice. Lyra Dane was their only chance. They climbed fast, boots scraping against stone as Lyra led them through a narrow cut in the ridge that none of the SEALs had noticed before. The wind howled through the rocks, carrying the smell of dust and metal. Rylan couldn't stop watching Lyra's silhouette as she moved ahead, silent, controlled, untouchable. She hadn't looked at him again since dropping the truth like a grenade in front of his men. Keller panted behind him. Sir. She's acting like she knows every exit in this desert. She does, Rylan muttered. Because she had always been like that, seeing things others couldn't, reading terrain like it whispered to her. That's why she had been the best sniper the team's ever had. That's why her fall hit him hardest. Halfway up the slope, Ortega whispered, Commander, be straight with us. Did you really leave her hanging back then? Rylan didn't answer at first. He didn't have a clean explanation. No version of the truth made him look good. I didn't speak soon enough, he finally said. And when I tried, it was too late. Keller stared at him, disappointed. Sir, she was one of us. I know, Rylan said softly. I know. Ahead, Lyra paused at a ridge overlook. She raised a closed fist, halt signal. The team dropped instantly, scanning the valley below. Dust trails streaked the horizon. Trucks, 8 of them, racing toward the canyon where the SEALs had nearly died. Keller swallowed. That's a lot of enemies. That's the second wave, Lyra said, eyes locked through her scope. They're grid-searching everything. And they're armed for capture, not kill. Rylan's stomach twisted. They want me alive. They want the drive, she corrected. You're just the container. The team shifted uncomfortably. Lyra lowered her rifle slightly and looked at Rylan for the first time since the confrontation. Her eyes weren't angry, they were tired. Deeply tired. I didn't come back because I forgave you. I came because your death will start a war the country isn't ready for. Rylan felt the weight of her words settle in his chest like lead. Lyra, the drive was destroyed. Years ago. Her jaw tightened. Prove it. Rylan held her stare. I can't. It burned in the crash. You saw it. I saw fire, she said. Not the drive. Her doubt cut deep. But she wasn't wrong. Ortega stepped forward. Look, whatever happened back then, we've got a bigger issue. How do we get to extraction alive? Lyra pointed toward a jagged stretch of cliffs. There's an old mining route 2 clicks west. Narrow trails, blind corners, and enough cover to vanish if we move right. And if we move wrong? Keller asked. You'll die in the first 30 seconds. The team traded looks that said everything, fear mixed with trust they weren't sure they should give. Rylan exhaled. We follow your lead, Lyra. All of us. She didn't smile. Didn't thank him. Didn't even nod. She just turned and started walking. But something in her silence felt different. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the first crack in the wall between them. Echo Ridge rose before them like a wall of broken teeth, jagged, uneven, carved by old explosions and forgotten storms. The abandoned mining route Lyra spoke of looked more like a graveyard of stone than a path to safety. Rusted rails twisted across the ground, half buried under decades of sand. Wind hissed through shattered wooden beams, making them creak like ghosts whispering warnings. Keller shivered. This place feels cursed. It is, Lyra said without slowing. 3 teams disappeared here years ago. Nobody came back. Comforting, Ortega muttered. Rylan followed close behind her. He could feel the tension stretching between them like a strained rope. She moved with absolute confidence, every step purposeful. The team trusted her aim, her instinct, her knowledge. But trust in her motives? That was shakier. They slipped into the first narrow trail, so tight only one man could pass at a time. Shadows clung to the rock walls, twisting the air cold. The sound of engines still rumbled faintly behind them, growing closer. Lyra raised a hand, halt. The team froze. She crouched, touching the ground where dust had shifted unnaturally. Tripwires, she whispered. Old ones. Half-rusted. But still live. Rylan leaned in. Militia? Miners, she said. From decades ago. But they'll kill you just the same. She disarmed the first trap with the same calm she used to fire a rifle, precise, unshaken. Watching her work made something twist in Rylan's chest. She'd adapted to survival in ways he couldn't imagine. She wasn't a soldier anymore. She was something harder. Sharper. Alone. They continued deeper. The second trap was worse. A collapsed beam rigged to drop an entire ceiling of boulders. Lyra solved it in seconds. The team tried not to look impressed. Rylan didn't bother hiding it. But the third trap wasn't old. Lyra spotted the fresh scuff marks immediately. Her voice dropped into a cold whisper. Get down. Everyone ducked. She knelt, examining the device, a modern claymore wired to a remote trigger. Keller's eyes widened. Someone planted this recently. Not someone, Lyra said. Them? Rylan clenched his jaw. They guessed we'd head here? They know you, she replied sharply. They know how you think. The words hit with more weight than she intended. A shadow of the past flickered between them. Before Rylan could respond, a distant voice echoed through the rocks, sharp, commanding, amplified by a megaphone. Commander Voss. We know you're in there. Surrender now and we won't open fire. Keller whispered, Sir, they're close. Lyra leaned in, eyes fierce. They're lying. They need you alive, but they'll kill your team to get to you. Ortega looked at Rylan. Orders? Rylan hesitated. Not because he was afraid, he'd accepted death long ago, but because Lyra's eyes were on him, waiting to see if he'd fail a second time. He squared his shoulders. We move. Fast and quiet. Lyra, you lead. We trust your path. Lyra's expression didn't soften, but something in her posture shifted, just barely. She nodded once. Then she sprinted forward, guiding them through a maze of death and shadows as shouts grew louder and boots pounded into the canyon behind them. For the first time in years they were running together. Not as enemies. Not as ghosts of the past. But as soldiers fighting the same storm. The narrow tunnels of Echo Ridge twisted like veins, carrying the pounding of boots and distant shouts straight to their ears. Every turn brought new threats. Loose rock, hidden pits, and the constant hum of enemy vehicles closing in. Rylan's heart raced, not from fear, but from the realization that Lyra's plan was their only chance. Every step she led them took calculated risks, and he felt the weight of trust pressing down like armor he didn't know he could wear again. 2 clicks to the ridge exit. Lyra whispered over the muted wind, eyes scanning every shadow. After that it's open terrain. But we won't have cover. If they spot us there, it's over. Keller muttered, Great. Open terrain with 30 trained killers behind us. Can't wait. Ortega rolled his eyes but stayed silent, trusting the woman who had saved their lives twice already. Then came the first shot. Sharp, clean, and precise. The distant clang of a rifle cracking against rock echoed through the tunnels. The team dropped instinctively, sand and dust kicking up around them. Lyra didn't flinch. She barely even turned her head. That's for you, she muttered under her breath. Rylan's stomach dropped. For a moment he thought she meant him. But then he realized she was speaking to the militia. Every shot she fired, every movement she made was a dance of death, cutting down threats before they could react. And yet she never aimed at his team. Crack. Another militant went down. Crack. Another. The enemy faltered, panic spreading like wildfire. It was clear they hadn't anticipated a hidden sniper this skilled, this precise, this merciless. Lyra's hands were steady. Her breathing controlled. Every shot whispered decades of experience. Keller nudged Rylan. Sir, she's insane. I mean that in the best way. Rylan didn't reply. He couldn't. He watched as Lyra moved, crouching behind a boulder, adjusting her scope, eliminating threats one by one. His chest twisted with guilt and awe. He had doubted her all those years. He had failed her when it mattered. And now she was saving him. The team reached a small opening in the tunnel. Lyra scanned the horizon, then pointed to a ridge above. We can make it there. But you move fast. No hesitation. They sprinted out into the open, bullets kicking up sand and dirt around them. Rylan felt the sting of a near miss against his shoulder, but he didn't flinch. Lyra covered them, crouched on the rocks above, firing in bursts that dropped enemies with unerring precision. Each shot was a statement. Asterisk, I am still here. I am still deadly. And I am not forgiving. Asterisk. The team reached the ridge with their hearts hammering. Behind them, the enemy paused, unsure how to respond to the invisible threat raining death from above. The militia faltered under the invisible hammer of Lyra Dane, the sniper they thought they'd destroyed with accusations and court-martial. Ryland finally allowed himself a single thought. Asterisk. She never stopped being the best. I never stopped underestimating her. Asterisk. Lyra descended carefully to the ridge, keeping her rifle ready. Her eyes flicked to Ryland, sharp, cold, but not angry this time. Just assessing. Judging him. Weighing if he deserved another chance. Ryland met her gaze. Thank you, he said quietly. No one else needed to hear it. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because the battlefield had already spoken. And she had already won. The ridge opened up like a knife's edge. Ahead, the valley stretched wide. No cover, only jagged rocks and scrub brush. Behind them, the militia regrouped, their numbers swelling as reinforcements poured in. The SEALs had never faced odds like this, and even with Lyra covering them, the tension was suffocating. Check your flanks, Lyra commanded, her voice low but sharp. She crouched behind a boulder, rifle poised. Once we hit the flat, it's a sprint to the extraction point. Any hesitation and they'll cut you down. Ryland's team nodded, adrenaline sharp in their veins. Keller's breathing was ragged, Ortega's hands shook slightly, but determination burned in all of them. They trusted Lyra. They had no choice. The first few steps onto open ground were chaos. Bullets tore into sand and rock around them. Lyra fired with surgical precision, taking down snipers perched on cliffs and marksmen hiding behind debris. Her rifle seemed to have eyes of its own, predicting movements before they happened. Every shot protected them, every shot claimed a life that might have been theirs. Then came the loudest, sharpest command, move faster. Lyra's voice sliced through the gunfire. They sprinted, boots pounding against unforgiving stone. The sound of their breathing mixed with distant explosions, sand spraying like rain. Ryland felt a sting across his arm, just a graze, but didn't slow down. No one did. Halfway across, Keller stumbled. A bullet had clipped his leg. Ortega grabbed him, dragging him forward. Ryland's heart hammered. He had to make it. They all had to. And Lyra, she was still above them, an unblinking specter of death. A sudden explosion rocked the ridge. Dust and stone flew in every direction. Ryland shielded Keller, feeling grit in his mouth, teeth and eyes. The enemy had planted explosives, anticipating their path. But Lyra had already neutralized the worst traps. This one was only partially successful. They were shaken but alive. Lyra's silhouette appeared against the setting sun, crouched, scanning, firing. Her movements were fluid, deadly. She was not just fighting for them, she was fighting for a chance at redemption. Every shot whispered a truth Ryland couldn't ignore. She was unstoppable and she had never really left. She had only waited for the moment when her skills mattered most. They reached the final slope. The extraction chopper was visible in the distance, kicking up sand and debris, its rotors slicing through the chaos. Ryland signaled the team to move in a tight line. Lyra covered them, taking calculated shots, clearing their path with lethal efficiency. Every step forward was agony and hope intertwined. Then a volley of bullets ricocheted off rocks. One militant had flanked them. Ryland felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, but Lyra's rifle cracked twice in the blink of an eye. The enemy dropped. Silence fell. For a moment they all dared to breathe. The extraction point was near. Safety for now. But the battle had left scars, physical, emotional, and invisible. Ryland looked up at Lyra. No words were exchanged. A nod was enough. The battlefield had been won, but the story between them remained unfinished. The chopper's rotors shredded the air above them, sand whipping into their faces, ears ringing from the engine's roar. Ryland's shoulder throbbed where he had been grazed, but he didn't notice. All he could see was Lyra, crouched low on the ridge, every movement calculated, every shot precise. Her eyes scanned the remaining threats like a predator reading the forest for prey. She was lethal, merciless, and utterly alone. Keep moving, she shouted over the chaos. Almost there. Keller dragged himself forward, gritting his teeth. Ortega helped him, steadying him as they ran. The remaining militia was frantic, disorganized after the sniper's relentless assault. They were retreating, or dying trying to catch the SEALs. Ryland's chest tightened. He had counted every life he was responsible for. This moment, the cliff-edge sprint to the extraction, was the culmination of everything: failure, guilt, and now redemption. And Lyra was the thread that held it all together. She was the invisible hand that had guided them from death to survival. A fresh volley of gunfire erupted from the cliffs. One militant had hidden in a crevice, aiming at Keller. Ryland froze, calculating, but before he could act, Lyra's rifle cracked twice. The enemy collapsed. The moment stretched long enough for Ryland to swallow the weight of gratitude and guilt. He had failed her once. He would never fail again. The chopper drew closer. The team approached the drop zone. But the ground was uneven, littered with rocks and debris. One wrong step and they would fall. Another volley erupted. Someone had flanked them again. Ryland pushed Keller down, taking a grazing wound in the arm this time. Pain flashed, but he ignored it. Survival wasn't about comfort. It was about moving together. Lyra adjusted her position on the ridge above. Go. Now. No hesitation, she commanded. Her voice carried authority that didn't require warmth. The team obeyed. Ryland felt a fleeting surge of fear. What if she didn't come down with them? What if she vanished again before he could reconcile what had happened? He wanted to call her name, to beg her to stay, to fix everything between them. But words were useless in the storm of bullets and dust. As they neared the chopper, the last militant fired a desperate shot. Lyra's rifle cracked. The enemy dropped mid-step. Silence followed. Only the wind, the rotors, and the pounding of hearts remained. Ryland finally allowed himself to exhale. He turned to look at her. For the first time since the canyon, her eyes met his without judgment, only recognition. Not trust, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She had saved them all. Again. And this time she had chosen to return to fight. Keller panted beside him. Sir, she's insane. Genius, but insane. Ryland's focus stayed on Lyra. Yeah, he said quietly. But she's ours. Somehow she's still ours. The team reached the chopper. The rotors lifted them away from the canyon floor, dust and debris swirling in a chaotic storm beneath. Ryland looked down at the ridge, at the path they had survived. He swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her he was sorry. For everything. For leaving her, for doubting her, for surviving when she had carried them all. But he didn't have to. She already knew. They both did. Lyra stayed a step behind, rifle at the ready, covering the team until the last possible second. Then finally she descended onto the skid of the chopper, and they lifted into the sky together, away from the canyon, away from the danger, away from the ghosts of their past. For the first time in years, Ryland believed some wounds could heal, even if silently. The chopper rose above the canyon, rotors slicing the air, sand and dust trailing like smoke from their narrow escape. The SEALs leaned against the cabin walls, bodies battered, hearts racing but alive. For the first time in hours they could finally breathe. Their ordeal had been relentless, and yet survival felt almost surreal. Ryland's eyes, however, never left Lyra. She sat slightly apart, rifle across her lap, expression unreadable, but he could sense the storm of emotions beneath her calm exterior. Keller whispered, voice hoarse, Sir. She saved us. All of us. I don't know how to thank her. Ryland shook his head slowly. You don't need to. Not yet. Just remember this. Remember how precise, how calculated, how unstoppable she is. And how we failed her once. Ortega frowned. I thought we all failed her once, sir. Ryland's jaw tightened. Maybe. But I, more than anyone, didn't stand up when it mattered. And she paid for it. The helicopter banked over a ridge of mountains fading into the orange light of sunset. In the valley below, the dust of the destroyed ambush still swirled like ghosts of the dead, reminders of how close they had come to losing everything. Ryland exhaled, letting the tension seep from his body, though the ache in his shoulder reminded him of the cost. Finally, Lyra broke the silence, voice quiet but sharp. You survived because I decided to intervene. Not out of forgiveness, not out of loyalty, but because you're still alive and the world is too dangerous for weak hands to hold the drive. Ryland met her gaze. His throat ached. I understand. Her eyes softened fractionally, just enough for him to sense something human beneath the soldier's steel exterior. Understand this, she said. I saved you all, but the next time the militia comes for you, I won't be there. You'll have to survive without me. He nodded, swallowing hard. I won't fail again. The chopper approached a safe landing zone near a military base. Emergency crews were waiting, and medics rushed toward them as the rotors slowed. Keller and Ortega were pulled away, their wounds tended. Ryland waited for Lyra, ready to offer something, an apology, a word of thanks, perhaps both, but she simply stepped out, rifle slung over her shoulder, moving with the same quiet authority she had carried on the ridge. She paused briefly, looking back. Remember, she said, voice carrying over the hum of the rotors, strength isn't measured by survival alone. It's measured by the courage to protect others even when you're broken inside. Then she vanished into the shadows of the base, a ghost once more. Rylan watched her disappear. The canyon, the ambush, the impossible sniper strikes, all of it seemed to shrink into memory, yet the weight of her presence lingered. He realized that survival wasn't just about escaping death, it was about understanding the cost, honoring the courage, and never underestimating the unseen forces that could change the outcome. As he boarded the base, shoulder still aching, heart heavy, he whispered to himself, "Lyra Dane. I'll make it right someday. I promise." Somewhere in the fading light, a sniper's rifle rested against rocks miles away, silent. One last shot had already been fired, but its echo carried far beyond the canyon. Not death this time. Redemption. And for the first time, Rylan believed it was possible.